Fandom Friday, a podcast focused on various fandoms brought to you by Fan Nation, the Geekstravaganza, the Ocean County Library's annual all-ages fandom library con. On today's episode, we will be discussing Supernatural.
My name is Courtney Nidu, and I am a teen services librarian.
My name is Hope Carroll, and I am an adult services librarian.
My name is Rachel Beaton, and I am a circulation library assistant.
We all love the TV show Supernatural. We're going to kind of round robin and ask each other questions and just kind of chat about the show. You've got a question to start us off?
I do. My first question is, what introduced you to the Supernatural fandom?
I think I was probably in like 5th grade when I started watching, 5th or 6th grade. I was like 12. That was in about 2012. So Supernatural was doing great on the internet. I think it was just, I had other friends. We'd already watched Doctor Who. We'd already watched, I don't know, Sherlock. And then we were like, what else has a lot of seasons and seemingly just kind of keeps going and is on Netflix? And it was Supernatural. So I started watching it. And I think I watched up until the 7th or 8th season and then stopped. At that point, I was in like high school. And then after it ended, I had friends texting me about it because they knew I used to watch it. And then I watched through the rest of it. So then I watched all of it like last year. And that was my journey. What about you, Hope?
So mine, I started in the dark ages before streaming. I got an iPod for my 15th birthday, probably 2009 or something. And iTunes had the freebies where you could get like an episode of science fiction fantasy, and one of them was Supernatural. So I was like, this looks cool, it's free, I'll try it out. So I tried it out and I thought it was really cool. And I was like, I can't wait to see more. So I borrowed it from the library. And so go to your local library for Supernatural. And I just started borrowing like a disc at a time, binge watching like 4 hours a night. At this point, it was only a few seasons long, so I didn't have to like be overwhelmed by, oh my gosh, there's like 14 seasons. It was probably like on the 5th season at that point. So that was how I started. What about you, Courtney?
I actually probably started about the same year-ish as Rachel, except at the time I was 23 or something, and my friend and I had finished watching all of True Blood on HBO, I guess. I don't know, but it was the like vampires and fairies and stuff show. And we were looking for something similar. And again, we were looking for something that had a bunch of seasons and was available streaming. And we found Supernatural. And we started watching, and there were 7 seasons. And we managed to watch all of it in time to catch the 8th season finale on TV. We watched a lot of Supernatural. And I pretty much kept watching consistently since then. I watched through the finale and have rewatched it a bunch of times. And that's how I got there. And somewhere in there, I started looking stuff up about it, and that led me to Tumblr and this immense, very dedicated fandom who loves to talk about Supernatural.
Yes, I will confess right now, I have not finished the series. I only went through the beginning of season 13 because I was finishing up getting my master's, and I just did not have the time to watch it. And I'll eventually finish it, but I kind of read some spoilers of how it ended, and I'm just like, I don't know.
It's okay. I technically watched all of it, but if you ask me to recount the plot of the last like 4 seasons, I would not be able to do it. I think I remember through maybe season 12, and then I remember the end, and that's it.
Yeah, good at places, any.
Yeah, a lot of stuff gets smushed together. I saw someone online refer to it as a show that's like Dragon Ball Z, only with these 2 hunky dudes hunting ghosts or whatever, and it's like, what? And it's like every season it has to ramp up more and more till it's like, and I guess this is just straight up not going to be a spoilers free podcast. I don't think it can be, so spoilers alert, but it's like first you're fighting monsters and ghosts, and then it's like demons, and then it's like the king of hell, and then it's like angels, and then it's actually God, and then it's God's sister, and it's ridiculous.
I feel like this is not a spoiler-free podcast, but also it's not really possible to spoil the show. Like, you could watch the first season and then I could tell you that they kill God and you're like, okay, that doesn't really ruin the experience. If anything, it makes it better.
That is a good point. Yeah. So I guess next question would be then we're talking about different seasons. Do you have a favorite episode or a favorite season?
Some of my favorite episodes are the meta funny ones. I've shown the Scooby-Doo episode to so many people who have and have not watched the show. I've shown the French Mistake to a lot of people, but I think in terms of the traditional like monster scary episodes, the one with Bloody Mary in it, which I think is literally like the second or third episode, is great. It's genuinely extremely like frightening still. I think that the less that they show, the better. Like the early seasons when they had no money and they were just like showing a shadow at the end of the hallway ends up being much scarier than when they had way too much money and tried to do CGI later on. And then I think the first episode of, is it season 4, where Dean comes back and like crawls out of the ground? I think that's season 4, is an all-time one for me. I will rewatch like just that episode every once in a while because it's so good. And I love Castiel. Like when he gets introduced, that's when I started getting really dedicated to the story as opposed to just like watching one-off episodic monster hunting episodes, you know?
Yeah, the season 4 opener is really good. Season 4 and 5 are amazing. But again, I've seen some people say that should have ended at the end of season 5, and I'm not there. There was so much good stuff. Like you said, the meta episodes are really, really good. I think it's the end of season 6, The Man Who Would Be King. That's like a Castiel episode, which, I mean, I love them all so much, but like that was a really, really good episode. And I think season 8, I'm not a film person, so I'm going to sound ridiculous, but some of the cinematography is so beautiful. Like it's just this silly Monster of the Week show, on network TV, and some of it is really, really beautifully shot.
I am some of those people that prefer the first 5 seasons. My favorite is actually the first season, and the first episode of the second season is like my absolute favorite because I love Dean. And when, Dean's like struggling, like, is he going to go on to the light? Is he going to stay behind because he's got so much unfinished business? And that just hits me right in the feels, especially like what his dad does for him and what Dean had, I guess, spoiler alert, when his dad sacrifices himself after they spent the whole first season trying to find their dad and reconnect and never getting that chance to like work things out between each other. Like that really gets me. So that's my favorite. And I really did like the Monster of the Week because the stakes were smaller and it was like their world that was at stake and their family. And sometimes it's like, oh, here goes the end of the world again. Like after a while, I find that a little tiring, but I understand people really like the later seasons too.
There's a quote in Buffy where one of the side characters is getting filled in on everything, and he's like, I find myself needing the plural for the word apocalypse. I don't know what it is. And it's like that very true for Supernatural too. You start talking about the end of the world or when characters die, and it's like, well, which time are you talking about? Which is absurd. It's patently absurd.
I like the word apocalypse.
Apocalypse. Yeah, that's good.
That can be plural.
Or apocalypses, like ellipses.
There you go.
Yeah, I think I agree with you where I feel like it's the first 5 seasons are very kind of coherent and they had a plan and they did it. And for me, the low point is probably like 8, 9, 10, where they were just sort of continuing on without a plan. And then it gets amped up to such an insane degree around season 12 that it gets amazing again. I don't know that it's good in the way they wanted it to be good for me, but I was having a great time.
That is true. And there's always those episodes like French Mistake. That was a good one. Was that the one where they went to the alternate universe and everyone was actors there?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. I love Misha playing himself.
Oh. Ridiculous.
Who is your favorite character and why?
I already said Castiel. And I think in terms of main characters, it would be him just because I remember when I watched the show for the first time when I was probably 12 or 13. And I was like, okay, demons, brothers, I get it. And then he showed up. And that was when it felt like it became something bigger. Up until then, it had been, like you said, small stakes, monster of the week. It was a family, like it was about brothers and family. And it was like up until the end too. But once they introduced him, I think it felt like it was becoming about, I don't know, about like the world and the idea of the afterlife. I don't know. I felt like it became something bigger than itself. And I associate him with when that started. It was also nice to have someone who wasn't part of their family, kind of having an outsider in a sense. It was very refreshing at that point because it had just been Sam and Dean for 4 seasons and Bobby and some other people, but really just them. And every time Castiel left, I felt like it did kind of dip a little bit and I just didn't care as much. But in terms of a minor character, I like Rowena. She's later on. And I feel like I didn't like a lot of the plot lines she was a part of, but I liked her. I thought she was funny and she was just always really unhinged in a great way. And I was always entertained when she was on screen. So I'm going to say those two. What about you guys?
Well, I know that you are a Dean fan, so I will let you talk about his many, many virtues. So I guess I'll say I really appreciate the character of Sam Winchester from the beginning to where he gets to at the end. It's weird because watching it over again and watching it really quickly, the first 3-ish seasons, I think, are more or less from Sam's point of view. He is how we understand the world, getting dragged back into this life by your ridiculous older brother in a ridiculous old car and trying to track down your ridiculous dad who you've got a bad relationship with. Once you get to the end, he goes through all this stuff with not wanting to be part of this life and ultimately completely devoting himself to it while still being able to, like, I can see him actually living a normal life too, actually making the balance where they go back and forth so often with like, oh, are we going to sacrifice ourselves for the world? And it seems like he finally gets to a point where he gets over this feeling like he has to give himself up for the family business. And I like that. Plus, he's a really tall goofball, and like I think that that's great for not one of the main characters. I mean, Bobby is amazing and I want him to be my ghost hunting uncle. And also, oh, you know what, Jody and Donna, the Wayward Sisters team or Wayward Daughters or whatever they were going to call it, I would have watched that show very, very happily.
Yeah, I was sad they didn't do that. So yeah, my favorite character, like I said before, is Dean. In my humble opinion, he's the handsomer of the two brothers. So it doesn't hurt. But I like his personality, and he's loyal to family, like, to a fault. Off of what Courtney said, where, yeah, Sam can survive on his own, but Dean, he's never never been willing to really learn to live without his brother, and like even his dad, like he struggled without that. So, you know, I think family is like very important. So that's why I have a very soft spot for Dean. And also, I love his personality. He's funny. He loves pie. Who doesn't love pie? Now that you put me on the spot to name all of his attributes, I'm just like, I don't know, he's amazing. Yeah, like all the episodes where they just let him be funny. Those are the ones that I like the best. Or even the one where, I think it was season 3, when he keeps dying like over and over in like increasingly ridiculous ways.
Heat of the moment.
That was great.
Oh, yes,
I love that one. As far as a minor character, I actually liked that one, Garth, I think he was, that hunter. Oh, yeah. Like, he is not what you would think of a hunter. You're like, how does this guy survive anything? Because he's just so ridiculous. But I don't remember if he eventually gets killed off, but
I don't
he
think
did survive
so.
a lot.
No, he has a happily ever after.
Oh.
He's got a cute little family, and I think does dentistry on the, like, as a main gig because hunting doesn't pay
Doesn't pay the
anything.
bills.
It's extremely funny when he comes back. You're right, it's way later, like maybe season 13, 14. And because the brother, you've just been sort of isolated with Sam and Dean for like 6 seasons. And he's like, yeah, it's more of a hobby, really. Like he just like has a family and will still hunt, but just is clearly very well adjusted. And it's really funny to be like, oh yeah, only Sam and Dean are these insane people that live in a bunker in the ground. And every other hunter seems like it's more of just a side gig.
Now that you put it that way, I think you're right. And then what you mentioned before, not always being about family, that makes me think of Bobby's family doesn't always end in blood. And I thought that was a great message from the show.
Give me a found family storyline in fiction, and I just cannot get enough of it.
Yeah, I love those. Do we have a favorite supernatural creature from the show? I know that we have seen demons, we've seen angels, some of like Leviathan. Like, what is our favorite?
The siren was pretty funny, honestly. Just kind of an interesting take on this idea. Like, obviously, they pull from a lot of different myth and legend and all that stuff. Did they ever end up with the Jersey Devil?
They almost do in one of the Leviathan episodes. They go to the Pine Barrens, and you're like, yes, Jersey Devil. But no, it was just the Leviathan, which was very disappointing.
Yeah, I feel like they really shied away from a lot of actual cryptid. Like my favorite episode is when they're like, no, aliens are not real and you're stupid if you believe in them. It's fairies. And it's like everything else is real. Yeah, I'm going to say ghosts, which is a very lame answer, but I think that they occupy maybe the majority of the Monster of the Week episodes. Is like, it's just a ghost. And I like that they tend to be more like every ghost has a different story. There's one in particular, early, first 5 seasons, couldn't tell you where in the first 5 seasons, where there's a little girl in a painting. And I just remember the painting keeps moving around and they think it's the dad. And then it turns out to be this little girl. She might have been the most frightening monster for me. I just remember for some reason, probably because I was like 13, being very afraid of that particular episode. And I don't know why. Also, the one where the brother and sister live in the walls of the house.
Oh, yeah, that was scary.
That was
And there was one episode where all the kids in the town were turning into creepy little monsters.
Yes. They were like changelings, right?
And the one scene and the mom looks in the rearview mirror or whatever, and the kid in the back seat has all these teeth. Very scary. I don't know why, but monster children are scarier than other types of monsters.
Yeah, I'm with you in the ghosts. I mean, if you think about it, demons are ghosts, so they make up the vast majority. Like, I like the part where they have to figure out who the ghost is and how do they find where they're buried. You always have Sam doing most of the research, and then he'll be like, oh, get this, and then Dean's ready to go out and do some ghost hunting. That's probably why I also like Dean, because I can be lazy and I'm like, research, ugh, who wants to do that? So give it to my brother. He can do all the work. I was going to say that episode you were saying with the creepy picture. Like, I remember that episode very vividly, and I don't know why, but it even stuck in my mind. Like, I was drinking this vanilla like tea, and I can still remember that with that episode. And every time I drink that tea, I think of that episode and the creepy picture ghosts.
Yeah, I feel like I find the ghost episodes kind of comforting because they are quite, I don't want to say formulaic because they're all like different. They never really out and out do the same thing multiple times, but you can usually guess. It's like, okay, it's never the first or second thing that they think it is. So then by process of elimination, it's probably that innocuous person. It's like a Scooby-Doo episode. It's like, it's the weird guy they met at the beginning and then you forgot about, and it's going to be something to do with him.
But yeah, it's a very mystery TV formula. I like mysteries, so now mysteries and ghosts, perfect. What do we think about the new prequel? Do we like the idea? Do we not like the idea? Are we going to watch it? What are our thoughts?
Yes, this is my question. I hate the idea, is my very strong opinion. Mostly just because I'm like, what's the point? I feel like they're banking on the fact that everybody wants more of the universe. And I think that they're wrong. And I think it was sort of, maybe I'm alone in this, but it was sort of the same thing as when they tried to do the Fantastic Beasts prequel for Harry Potter, because they're like, you want more universe. And it's like, I think people were more just attached to like the characters themselves. Personally, I just don't especially want to watch characters that I don't know. I feel like after 15 seasons, I'm attached to like Sam, Dean, Castiel, their journey. but I don't necessarily want to watch Mary. She's great. She seems cool, but I think they're biting off more that they can chew. Also, because the CW is apparently like losing a lot of money, according to a news article I read the other day. So I feel like this is a big gamble.
All of that is super true, but also Jensen Ackles is very involved in it. And I believe that he loves Supernatural more than any of the rest of the Supernatural fans love Supernatural. Plus, the main show started in 2005, which is ridiculous. It looks like the new show, it's going to be a little bit more modern, actually like come out of the gate with canon gay characters and a little bit more diversity, which, I mean, Supernatural got there, but it's an old show, and this is going to be a new show. Jensen's going to be involved in it. It seems like it's going to be Dean is actually in there telling the story. There's no way I'm not watching. It may end up being hate watching, but I will be watching.
Fair enough. I also don't have cable, so I would need to torrent it, and I just don't think I'm willing to put in that time.
Yeah, for me, I say anything for my Supernatural fix, and especially my Dean fix. You know, I need more Dean in my life. I mean, on one hand, I feel like you know how John and Mary's stories ends, so that kind of does keep you from being like too excited. But I think it'd be fun to see them as people instead of just like Sam and Dean's parents. I mean, kind of like how like now that I'm older, I can see my parents as they had lives before I came along. You know, like who would have thought? Dean is getting to know his parents now as people instead of just, oh, that was mom and dad. So I think that's cool. And I think it'll also bring new people into the fandom because they might like start watching it and be like, what is this? And then they'll join us on this crazy obsessive journey. That's how I feel. But I get why a lot of people are apprehensive because it's very hard to make prequels and spin-offs work.
Yeah, so. And they've already failed once because they tried with the Wayward Sisters, which granted, very different. And I would have watched that. I was excited about that one. So I feel like I'm more just bitter that I didn't get that. I'm like, I don't want this.
I wrote emails about that.
I was surprised, actually. I thought it would have gotten spun off because strong female characters right now are very on trend. And what's more stronger than Jodie and Donna, you know.
And I forget her name. The actress who plays Claire has been like doing a bunch of other stuff. I think she might be legit superstar in the next 5 or 10 years or whatever. She was signed on for this tiny little CW spinoff.
CW might live to regret it.
Yeah, I don't know what's going. Like, I've read some of the same articles with all this different stuff going on with the streaming services, and I'm like, man, just leave my TV where it was, please. I feel like old man shakes fist at cloud or whatever, but don't change any of this. I just leave it alone.
It is wild. This is sort of off topic, but because all of these like Supernatural started airing in 2005, so like it was on VHS and then it was on CD, and now because it's all streaming, it's like, well, if no one carries it anymore, other than obviously people will upload it illegally, people can pirate it, but it could just kind of vanish. Like the era of streaming is very strange because if a platform decides they don't want it anymore, it's kind of just gone.
Yeah.
Unless you get it from the library, which you should.
Yes, you can get the later seasons though. Don't try to start it from the beginning. I'm sorry.
Yeah, sorry. Me and my brother will make fun of my dad because he's got this big cabinet under the TV and it's just full of DVDs. And it's like, Dad, what are you doing? But we were watching a movie together and we had to stop in the middle because we're all adults and work is work and whatever. So we watched half of a movie that was streaming on a service. And when we went back the next week, it wasn't on the service anymore. And we ended up having to borrow the DVD from my dad, who, again, we mock relentlessly for having this ridiculous DVD collection. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, stuff can absolutely just disappear.
My dad's the same way. Giant DVD collection. He's like, if you don't own it, you may not have it.
I distinctly remember borrowing, I think it might have been Supernatural, maybe not, but went back pre-streaming because we had Netflix, but when it was just DVDs and watching, like doing basically the same thing as Hope with the library of like sending it in, getting another one, having to wait because my mom wanted to watch Call the Midwife, having to wait for her to send her DVD back, getting the next episode like a month later, watching 6 more episodes. It was kind of fun.
Plus, I feel like if you watch something spread out, you remember it more. When you binge stuff, everything just is like this big club, massive weirdness that happens.
I have a formative memory of walking to my friend's house because we didn't have cable to watch the season finale, I think of season 8. It ends with Dean turning into a demon. That's the final shot. I just remember he opens his eyes and they're black, and then it ended and we lost our minds. And it was just like, it was fun. Like I like shared experiences like that.
I think that's season 9 because season 8 was the one that me and my friend managed to catch up to on TV. And season 8 finale was the one where the angels were falling.
I see. Yeah, you're definitely right. That was after that.
Man, they definitely could have kept Demon Dean around for a little bit longer.
Yeah, I think that's what I started to sort of lose interest a little bit because it felt like they had escalated to the point where there was just no consequences. Like they would do an insane thing and you're like, all right, I give it 3 episodes and they're going to undo that. Like it's they can't commit because they don't know how many seasons there's going to be. So they can't change anything big in case they get renewed again.
That's a good point. I always felt it suffered a little bit being on the local when you have like 21 episodes because they would be like, oh, like the season with Lucifer. They're like, oh my gosh, Lucifer's on the loose. And then they go off and they're like hunting. And I'm like, did you guys forget about Lucifer? And all of a sudden, like 4 episodes from the end, oh my gosh, Lucifer. So
yeah.
Might have been able to like compress it a little bit. But
yeah.
I don't know. They have a giant fandom, so they were doing something right.
Yeah. It's funny because they started airing in 2005. That was what TV was. Every season had 40 episodes and every show had 20 seasons, and you just kind of like SVU or Grey's Anatomy, you just kept making it. And then in the course of them airing, it became all about streaming where it's like every show has 5 episodes. Each episode is an hour long and there's a 3-year break between seasons. It's just such a wildly different way of consuming things. And it's interesting to see them kind of try to respond to that while still being like a cable TV show and sort of succeeding.
So to tie it in a little bit to the library, has anyone like read any of like the tie-in books or like Bobby's Guide to Hunting, the anime series?
I feel like none of it is exactly right, which is ridiculous because I just said that I would watch the prequel no matter what, but I feel like I want to read the actual in-universe Carver Edlund or whatever supernatural book series, and I don't feel like the ones that we got here in the actual universe compare.
I watch clips of the anime and it looks really funny. Like I would love to watch it with friends, but I've never sat down and read a supernatural book. It's wild they never tried to do the Carver Ed, like actually publish them, because I think people would have bought them.
Yeah, because they did the tie-in, like they have John Winchester's journal, so why not?
Yeah.
I just read the very first of the spin-off books, and it didn't have Jensen and Jared, so it just didn't have that spark. It was missing something, and I think that's what it was missing. But I'll probably go back and try anything we can fix, right? So in a similar vein, what do we think about how enduring the supernatural fandom has been? It's been 2 years, they're still supporting full-on conventions. Do we think it's going to continue? What do we think about that?
I think it's past the point of no return of being enduring. It's funny because you look at like Game of Thrones ended also like 2 years ago, and I feel like nobody talks about it anymore. It was such a cultural phenomenon, and they have the prequel coming out now. That was way more popular than Supernatural ever had been on a global scale, but people just kind of like forgot about it and don't reference it anymore, whereas Supernatural, like, people do. Like I was the one I think that asked that question because Star Trek has a convention, which is one of the biggest science fiction franchises of all time. And Star Wars, another one, Marvel. And then Supernatural's a TV show that aired on the CW and for 15 seasons with 3 guys in it, but it supports an entire convention where people will keep coming back over and over and over to meet the same 10 people. And I feel like there's not many other media properties that that's the case for. And I think it's going to keep going. Like, I think you said, the show's over. There's nothing else. You have to kind of keep talking about it online. It's not like you're going to get more of it. So people have to make their own fun, you know?
It sort of fills that sci-fi fantasy space. It was long enough that it's almost okay that it was just the one show. And it's like, all right, Star Wars, you're going to have your epic space wizard battles, and Star Trek is kind of like the same sort of thing, like the science utopia exploration side of it. And this Americana nostalgia fest where it's like you've got denim and flannel and assault rounds for a shotgun that you made when you were 12. It's like this very particular type of fantasy that I think will just continue to resonate with people. Plus, I mean, no shade or whatever, but there is a lot of fans who I think feel a little bit too much like they know the actors, like for real. The whole parasocial thing, which drives some of it, which is a very, very powerful force.
I think that they're still doing the conventions is cool. Like, I kind of feel in the same way as Courtney about the Star Trek and Star Wars. They continued on even when you had a drought for like decades of nothing. And even today now, even with what they're doing with streaming services, I think it makes it harder for series to have like a sell-by date. Like, I'm watching shows that originally aired 15 years ago, and like, I have a friend, she just discovered Supernatural. She's watching it. She's discovered Castiel. She's like, oh my gosh, Hope, this is amazing. I need more Castiel. Like, she's trying to find merchandise that has Castiel, which, it's harder now. So I don't think anything anymore has like a sell-by date. So on your point like Game of Thrones, I feel like that one kind of fizzled because people were so angry about how it ended. But Supernatural, even if people aren't completely satisfied by the ending, you didn't have that cultural anger that you're like, I'm just going to ignore it now.
I don't know if we want this to be a question, but I wasn't particularly happy with how they decided to end the show. For me, it felt a little bit like a betrayal of the themes that they'd been building for so many seasons. But it's apparently not angry. People aren't angry enough to quit.
Yeah, I had a friend who said she wasn't going to watch the ending, and that way it never ends. If she hasn't seen the ending, for her, the show has never ended. So it's like endless possibilities. And I saw how they ended it, and it seemed how they wanted to like tie everything up in a nice, neat little bow and make it impossible to ever go back and have 60-year-old Sam and Dean hunting. And, like, why can't you just leave it open to our imaginations? That's what I wish they would do.
Yeah, Courtney, I think you're very right. It's very funny that everyone hated the way Game of Thrones ended and now no one talks about it. But also I feel like I don't know anyone who loved the ending of Supernatural, but I know a lot of people who hated it. And yet I feel like it fueled people to go back and watch it and continue to talk about it. Because in my opinion, it was bad in a really weird way. I don't think it would have been that hard to do an ending that was just fine. That like you were never going to please everybody, but I think they could have been like, and they're going to keep hunting and they're going to train the next generation, whatever, cycle continues, A New Hope, etc. But instead they were just like, it's over and they're dead and we're never going back. And it was like, okay, sure, that's fine. No one asked for that.
All they needed to do was bring back Lisa and Ben and say, surprise, Ben is his son for realsies. And Ben's got to be like 20 by now. So exactly, next generation. Boom, spin-off series. They should have written me and I would have told them this.
Yeah. I think some of it too is how absolutely online the show is, the fandom. And I mean, like, it was a joke on Tumblr forever about how the Supernatural fandom has a reaction image for everything. And it seemed kind of true. It was so people who've never watched the show can name the characters and probably use some of the reaction images from the show just because it is so pervasive. And I don't know, it was 2020 when the show ended. Like, we had that big gap in the final season because everything shut down because of COVID. And then they ended up airing the last 3 episodes in November of that year, and the election was going on, and everyone had been locked down or like was just coming off of being locked down and trying to get used to everything being strange in the world, trying to like deal with the COVID precautions. Like, and I'm not going to say yay, nay, or otherwise about anything, but it was just a weird cultural moment. And I think that that sort of thing tends to stick. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I remember watching those last 3 episodes. I felt like I was watching something with real stakes, really intense, like my heart was pounding. And I mean, maybe I'm just a big nerd, like that's definitely true, but also mostly I watched Supernatural and it was just kind of like fun and a little funny, and in the early seasons a little scary. But the last 3 episodes felt like such a big deal.
I think it was the mass hysteria that everyone was experiencing in, like, was it the 3rd to last episode where the one where Castiel dies?
Yeah.
That was airing in the 24 to 48 hours between when no one was voting anymore in the US election, but the result, no one knew what was happening. And it was this,
Right.
like, everyone was just sitting there refreshing Twitter, like waiting to see the count. And then that was also happening. Like, I think I had more reactions in terms of people I went to high school with who knew I had watched the show, who I hadn't spoken to in years, were texting me, do you see what just happened on that show? And then I feel like when the finale aired, people like in the fandom space had a huge reaction to it. And I think it leaked a little bit outside, but that, like, the second to last episode that aired on like November, I don't know, early November 5th, 6th, something. That was like a cultural moment where it was like trending #1 on Twitter. Like everybody was talking about it because it was just so weird. And like Supernatural had existed for so long that I think people assumed it had already ended. People who didn't watch it, and then finding out that not only was it still going, but it had gotten even weirder. It was great. It was such a bizarre 24 hours in internet history.
Yes. Yeah.
I totally missed all of that. That's what I get for not watching it when it came out.
Yeah. I mean, really a mixed bag there.
Yeah. No,
I'm not sure I enjoyed. I'm not sure I
That's true.
enjoyed the experience.
That's true.
It was definitely an experience.
Yeah. Yeah, no, the ending, I mean, did any of us love it? I didn't.
Well, I didn't see it, but I spoiled myself how it ended, and I'm just like, that's what I was afraid of.
Yeah.
No way. No way would Dean get killed by a vampire.
No, that's all a
No.
dream. It didn't happen.
No.
No, he faked his death by a vampire, and then he went back to Lisa and Ben. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
I was talking to a friend about this because she said once you introduce the idea of heaven, I feel like in any show, you take away all the stakes because it's like, okay, if you die, you know where you're going. There's not like any real, as long as you know you're getting into heaven, it's sort of like, well, it's not that big of a deal. Like, it's a bummer. You can't see everybody, but like, it's not that big of a deal. And I think the idea of having them end it with Dean dying, going to heaven, and then it's just like a very weird, it was almost like ending it being like, and it was all a dream the whole time. It's such a strange cop-out.
Right, and it really didn't feel like Sam got to live his life the way I would have wanted him to have, like a full experience. Like he just seemed like he was waiting until he could die to go hang out in heaven.
Yeah.
And also, like, if you're in a universe where the Winchesters are real and Dean Winchester is a name that is known and all the monsters hate him, I don't think you'd actually name your kid that.
That's
You
a
are
really
just
good
putting
point.
a target on that poor little baby's back.
Plus, you can escape heaven. That Sam and Dean went to heaven. What was it, Dark Side of the Moon or something?
yeah.
And they escaped. So, come on. Dean escaped. They came back.
It's such a ridiculous.
The rest of it didn't happen. It's all
What
a
a
lie.
show! They escaped heaven with the help of Ash wearing like a Mexican wrestler mask, dodging out between different people's head. Ridiculous show.
And
Just
that was in season 5 or something. Like, that was so early on. It's just like, you've done it all already. You just gotta, come on, guys.
Yeah, I think the writers, they were just tired, and they were just like, and they went to heaven. And they all lived happily ever after in heaven.
It's hard to wrap things up, and I can imagine it being very difficult to really feel like you can do justice to a 15-season long show, a 15-season long story. But yeah, that sums it up for me. They did all of it before. The one thing that they hadn't gotten to do was live happy lives. So for me, narratively, that's what would have made sense.
Well-adjusted, living happy lives, occasionally hunting on the weekends. They tell all their friends, oh, we go on hunting trips. And they come back and they're like, how was the hunting trip? And they're like, it was great. And then you have a little flashback of them like staking a vampire and not dying.
Yes.
I think that's what I just assumed it was going to end with. And I think that's why people still talk about it, because it's like, how did you mess this up so badly? Like, I feel like it was bad in such a weird way that's so funny to talk about.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I think we've got this idea kind of where it's like happy endings can't be meaningful endings. Like it has to be sad for it to be real. And sometimes things are okay. They really are.
Yeah, and especially ending in the midst of COVID, it's kind of a bummer. Like, it was like, yeah, you can fight really hard and kill God, but at the end of the day, you're just going to die in an unremarkable, boring way. And it's just like, is that really the ending we needed?
And then who's running heaven anyway if they killed God?
Isn't it Jack? It's Jack.
Oh, Jack. Okay.
You maybe didn't get all those details.
I guess I didn't get those details.
The godson.
All right, spoiler alert.
Yeah, major character for like 6 seasons, but none of us really talk about him because he doesn't show up until like season 12 or 13.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that is about going to do it for us. Thank you. I enjoyed this conversation very much.
Yeah, it's always fun to nerd out together.
Thank you for joining us today. Be sure to check out our website, theoceancountylibrary.org/teens/fannation for all events happening this year in person and virtually. All titles mentioned in today's episode can be accessed free with your library card. Until next time, have a fantastic day.